Welcome to the Healthy Skin Show with Jennifer Fugo, where we're flipping everything you've been told about your chronic skin issues upside down and connecting you with alternative solutions your dermatologist never told you about.
Welcome back to episode number 241 of the Healthy Skin Show. In today's episode, we are talking about a personal story. I know that you guys really appreciate hearing from people and what they have gone through, what journey they have been on with their skin. Because a lot of this stuff, as you know, talking about your skin flaring up and all of the various symptoms and gut problems and all sorts of things are oftentimes not discussed. And when you bring it up to someone who may be in your family or even a friend, you could find that they just blow you off or try to shut the conversation down because they're really not comfortable with what you're sharing. And so that's why I feel like having these personal stories shared here on the Healthy Skin Show is so important. My guest today is Sheradyn Dekker. Now, some of you might recognize her name because I was on her podcast maybe about a year ago. Might have been more recent, but anyway, I have mentioned Sheradyn before to my community. She is a qualified health gut nutritionist with a master's in nutrition and postgraduate studies in functional diagnostic nutrition. Sheradyn not only has the head knowledge, but also has experienced symptoms firsthand. Having spent years battling chronic gut pain, which she was told was IBS, she had bloating, missing periods, and scalp dermatitis. She is passionate about helping others get to the root cause of their symptoms. When dieting, she had shared with me that supplements and medications just simply did not work for her symptoms, and that's ultimately what pushed her to go on to study functional diagnostic nutrition and now uses a root cause approach, incorporating nutrition, herbs, and functional testing to help those with chronic symptoms. Her goal is to educate and empower women to listen to their bodies, acknowledge their stress, and to stop using a Band-Aid approach to their health. So let's dive into today's conversation. Hi, Sheradyn. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
I know, me too. I feel like it's, we're friends, but it's nice to chat properly and have it recorded.
Exactly. Well, so for those of you who might recall, you may have remembered that a while ago I shared I was on Sheradyn's podcast. That's how we originally met. And we actually ended up doing, and we'll talk about this today, about Sheradyn's own specific skin case. And from there, we just became friends, and she became my go-to person in Australia. So we send a lot of clients to Sheradyn now. And I know. So I thought that this was a great opportunity to have you come on the show to talk about yourself, your story, and some of the insights that you have learned throughout this entire process and also working with clients. So I'm really excited. Do you want to share really quickly, what's the name of your podcast for everybody who is like, oh, wait, there's a podcast? Another one I should check out?
I know. Well, I was stalking your podcast for years, I reckon, before I actually had the guts to go, hey, Jen, do you want to come on mine? So it's the Empowered Hormones podcast with Sheradyn Dekker. And I actually think you were pretty early on. You're one of my you were my first big guest. And I was like, I can't believe it. I've got Jen coming on my show. So that was a huge career highlight for me. But yeah, Empowered Hormones podcast with Sheradyn Dekker.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, so let's talk a little bit about your journey because like you, I think we kind of shared a similar story in that we both had skin issues, but we started out more with gut problems first. And I think many of my listeners know that there are connections from skin out to other systems, and oftentimes there are gut issues as well. So do you want to talk a little bit about what was going on for you in terms of gut problems?
Yeah, so it was, I don't know, it's been such a long journey. And like anyone with health stuff, it's never just a simple fix. But my gut journey probably started when I was about 17, 18. I actually went overseas. So I'm in Australia, as you've kind of mentioned out, but I went overseas to Bali and was like, yes, Bali holiday, this would be amazing. Ended up getting sick, didn't realise and didn't have the awareness that it could be bacterial parasites at the time. But I had gastritis over there and food poisoning, came back, actually got glandular fever a couple weeks later. And then since then, all my gut issues started. So chronic constipation, like maybe going to the toilet once a week if I was lucky, severe bloating, acne, skin issues, my scalp really flared up. I lost my period for about 7 years while I was going through that whole gut journey, as well as a lot of stress and things as well. But it was primarily that gut was the pain point day in, day out. But back then I never made the connection to, the inflammation or the stress in my body, or that it was, could even possibly be causing my skin issues. Because for starters, I didn't even know what was driving the gut issues. And when I went to GPs and professionals, it was just like, you've got IBS and take a few more laxatives or eat a bit more fiber. And it was the same with my periods. It was like, just go on birth control pill because you don't have a period. And to me, that was so frustrating because I've always been such a health conscious person. I've always eaten well and exercised and looked after my body. So to have this whole cascade of health issues and not know what was driving it was a really hard time for me.
Yeah. And the one thing I do want to highlight here, and I've talked about this in at least one episode, is that international travel does matter. I mean, you can pick up organisms like in your own water or eating out, but I do want to know where people traveled to, and it is extremely common when clients tell me that they've gone to Bali. I don't think I know a single person who hasn't gotten sick in Bali. It's the same with India, folks who have gone to live in certain areas or visited certain areas of Africa. It's just different. And part of it is that the microbiome's set up different. We're just not used to being there. And those organisms are like, oh, this is interesting. And maybe if you don't get sick right out the gate in certain areas, like I've had clients who went to Mexico and were like, no, I didn't get sick there. But then like years later started to get ill, and they're so frustrated with how they ended up with all of these underlying issues. And I'm like, you might have picked it up and it didn't really initially make you sick for whatever reason. But then with time, it got worse and worse and worse. And now you're to a point where your system can't manage it anymore. So I do think that's a really important point that you highlight there. So let's talk a little bit about your actual skin issues, how they showed up. What was the initial problem? I know you actually mentioned already about like a scalp dermatitis. How did the skin issues initially present? And what was it like when they were really flared up?
Yeah, so I remember when it first started flaring up, it was around the time of the gut issues, and I had a lot of itchiness on the scalp, but really it was just a lot of inflammation as well. Like it would look red all around the top of my scalp, but also around the back. And the thing is, I've got quite thick hair. It's short at the moment, but it's thick. So it's actually hard to sort of see and feel personally what's going on with your scalp because you can see the red rim. And I remember when I was having it across the top and I was trying to send photos to you going, look, Jen, what is this? What is going on? What is driving this? And I'd had it for so long by then, but I didn't know. I'd seen dermatologists, I'd seen doctors, and no one really had answers. And then when I came across your Instagram and I was like, oh, here's someone who actually has an idea of what this could possibly be. But it was sore, it was red, and it was sore to touch, sore to brush my scalp, like if my hair would stay tied up. And I used to think it was just from having my hair tied up. And I was like, I'm using good hair lacquers, I'm not tying it tight. But when the hairs would move, it would be super painful. painful. And then, particularly around the bottom where I probably sweat the most because I'm so active, it just seems to get really itchy, really dry, really flaky. So it was just hard to know because, if I was going to see people, they're like, oh, it's just dandruff. I'm like, yeah, but it's so red. It was so red and angry, and that presented in my eyebrows as well. And then just at the top, actually where my glasses sit on the bridge of my nose, I had 2 spots as well. So it was very specific. It wasn't over my face, it wasn't anywhere else in my body, but it was eyebrows, around my glasses, the red rim here and the red rim around the bottom, and then the rest of my scalp was just super tender.
And that you said this started after you came back from Bali and had started to show all of these GI symptoms, correct?
Yep. And
so you did a number of different things, right? You had spent quite a lot of time, and I know you, like you're like me, we like to dig through data and look at testing and all sorts of things. So talk a little bit about what your initial steps were, just so that people, I think like for you, your initial concern obviously was the gut issues, correct? Or was there other concerns that you had that were going on with your case?
Yeah, so it was the gut issues, but it was also hormonal stuff as well. So I had acne at the time, and when I'd went to a dermatologist, and I actually went for my scalp, not the acne so much, because I was like, the acne I can cover with makeup and live with, really. I didn't know the primary drivers of it. I didn't know it was gut until I did the stool testing, as well as, Dutch comprehensive testing as well. But he was like, you've just got to take Roaccutane, that'll shut down oil production, that'll fix your scalp, and that'll fix your acne. And I was kind of like, well, I don't want to do that. So I'd seen dermatologists, and I'd seen a couple other naturopaths and things, and it was often remove your dietary triggers, dairy, gluten, those things. I'm like, I'm not eating them anyway, and I haven't for years. I eat really well. Like, what could it be that I'm missing? But I was also really underweight and over exercising, and probably not eating enough food and not making that connection that 1, my body needs energy to heal. 2, my gut's damaged, so there's obviously some kind of inflammation driving from that, but I couldn't even absorb the nutrients. It didn't matter if I was, let's say, eating a heap of butter and had vitamin A and eggs and, all these nutrient-dense foods, because I couldn't even get those nutrients into my skin as well. And I think understanding that and going, okay, I need more energy into my body. I need to sort my hormones out, because obviously there's some kind of inflammation or something going on there. And then also the gut stuff going, is it possible that there's triggers? And I tried DIYing it, and we were talking about this earlier. I tried the different supplements, I tried dietary triggers, I tried all those things, but it wasn't until I did stool testing and then went, what could this be? Then I treated some of the parasites, and that was good, but I still had the scalp issues until, I got in contact with you, and then was like, what am I missing in this picture that's driving this? And there was some bacteria and some fungal there still, whereas I just thought getting rid of the parasites was going to fix the issue.
Yeah, and I think that's oftentimes one of the mistakes that I see, and it's just like, we just don't know. We go, oh, this is the big problem, and that's what I'm going to tackle, and everything else will be fine. But I think one of the things, and this is one reason why too, like we in my practice, we send clients your way who are in Australia and New Zealand and whatnot, it's because you got to see firsthand in going through your own case that there was a larger requirement involved in actually addressing underlying issues. There was bacterial challenge, there were fungal challenges that also had to be addressed. Now, whether they were long-standing problems that, then you went to Bali and that was, the parasites were a whole other issue, or it was, who knows? It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It was too much for your particular system. And it was so great to be able to share and impart that information to you, because you were sharing with me before we started that your skin issues as a result of taking action on those suggestions that I had just given you about your own case, that has really shifted for you, correct?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like, I can't even express how much better my scalp is now since going back and treating some of those bacteria, as well as working on that stress response. Because I remember you going, oh, your SIG IgA as well. Like, my immune response was really, really low. And I've always struggled with neutropenia and immune conditions as such, but it wasn't from anything. They've done, you know, bone marrow testing, and they've done a whole heap of testing on me, and it's not actually, there's no leukemia, I'm producing white blood cells, but my body was just struggling. And I realize now going, oh, you know, that was partly just because I was stressed. That was partly a hormone thing, but then also because I still had some of those really inflammatory bacteria in there. And sometimes you just need that second opinion, and you're like, Sheradyn, go get another stool test done, recheck this stuff, because that one was a bit older. And I did, and there was some inflammatory bacteria. And since treating them and working on that stress response, and also treating the yeast and whatnot that was in there, it's like, oh, actually, yes, I still get flare-ups around ovulation, like I said, because there is increased oil production, but my acne is gone as well. Like, I have scarring. I don't know if you can see it on thing. I have some scarring, but I can touch my skin and I love it. Like, every day I'm just like, oh, I know I shouldn't be touching my skin because what if my hands got on them? But being able to touch my skin and not have those bumps, that inflammation, and also not having all that redness and the flaking. I was so self-conscious of my eyebrows because there was flakiness in it all the time. And I just had this one spot next to my nose that just would not go away no matter what I put on it topically. It didn't even matter if it was cortisol or anti-inflammatory stuff or antifungal stuff, nothing would touch it. Same with the top of my scalp, and like same with the bottom, nothing touches it. It was purely that gut stuff, getting that right, stress reduction, and actually sorting out my hormones as well, and going, oh, right, there's actually bigger picture stuff than going, oh, it's just the parasites, because that's what I kind of got told at the time from someone. So understanding there's a whole process to it, and like you said, just DIYing it in a sense was, you know, it just wasn't working.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great reminder for everyone listening, that that's why you can't get like, what do they call it? You don't put on blinders and just say, this is the one problem. We want to take a look at the whole thing. And I love that I was able to share the process with you so that you're able to bring that to the clients that you see. So for everybody in Australia, if you reach out to us, we're going to end up sending you to Sheradyn. So I wanted partially this episode to also be an introduction for her, because she's awesome. She's really, really great. And another thing that I really want to also talk about with you, Sheradyn, that you mentioned is like not eating enough, being overly stressed. Can you share about how you had this pattern of restriction and over-exercising and whatnot, and how that actually impacted your skin and your body's ability to be able to function appropriately?
Yeah, because it's funny, because I thought I was so healthy, you know, like I was like, I'm eating the 1,200 calories a day, and I'm exercising 5-6 days a week doing CrossFit, and I'm doing all the things, and I've still got all these issues, but without realizing that exercise isn't there to burn off the food I'm eating. You know, I'm allowed to exercise if I eat enough food. It's that reverse thing, and going, hey, actually, I need energy to exercise, because what I'm just eating on a day-to-day basis is purely just for basic functioning of my body. Then if I've got chronic gut and skin issues, how am I going to heal that if I'm not giving my body extra energy to heal? But I was in such A-type personality where it was go, 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 and, you know, like doing my masters and doing all this stuff, and I was so stressed and strung out, and then not eating enough food. Whereas, when I sort of started transition, go, wait a second, Sheradyn, that is not enough food. 1,200 calories. You should be eating like over 2,000 calories a day, plus you're exercising. It should be up, 2,500, somewhere around there. And understanding that, yes, I needed more food, but I was so scared of food because I'd had this food phobia from going, is that the trigger, or is that the trigger, or is that the trigger? Because I just blamed food for all the issues I had, because I didn't understand the underlying causes. And although I know that food plays a role, and it can either be healing or it can be damaging or it can cause triggers. I was actually blaming the food and going, it's the dairy causing my skin issues. But for me, that wasn't true, because I have dairy every single day now and my scalp is the best it's ever been. But I also eat the most food I've ever eaten, you know, like I drink juice again, and I eat dairy again, and I eat a range of different higher FODMAPs, you know, like garlic and onion and stuff, all these things that at the time I was like, oh, is that my trigger? Is that my trigger? So it was really demonizing food, but also I was stuck in that, I've got to eat small amounts, I've got to lose weight, I've got to be skinny, I've got to, because that's who I am and I'm this health practitioner and I've got to present as all these things, rather than going, wait a second, my body needs vitamin A, it needs zinc, you know, it needs these key nutrients to actually heal my skin. And when I started including them and fixing my gut so that I could eat them and I could eat more, I've seen such a shift. And now I've never been so happy with my body. I strength train, you know, 3-4 times a week, but I don't do high intensity stuff anymore, and I don't restrict anymore, because I now understand that that was actually driving a lot of my gut and a lot of my stress and, you know, a lot of my scalp, because I didn't even make the connection before that my scalp would flare up even worse when I was more stressed. Like, it's just, there's such a complex relationship there.
Yeah. With your clients who have gut issues and or possibly have skin issues, do you find that there is a stress component for them that they really do need to address but might not seem obvious to the person initially when they come to see you?
Yeah, 110%. Like, every time there's always, like, I mean, for starters, I don't know many females who aren't stressed. But then that we have this external stress, like we've been talking about before, you've got those external stresses, but then that internal gut stuff as well. So your body's going, and I'm just in constant fight or flight. Like, it's just this constant ongoing, you know, stressor. And then women come and go, oh, but my acne and my eczema and stuff, it's cleared up when I went on holidays and I ate all these foods that I would never normally eat. So I was so surprised, but I was in the sun every day and I was getting vitamin D and I was outside and I was eating slowly and I wasn't rushing and I wasn't just go from one thing to the next and shoving in some food while I'm trying to feed the kids and then rushing to the gym and then drinking my protein shake on the way home from the gym and then trying to work and then trying to do dinner. And you're juggling so many balls. And then on top of that, so many of these women are trying to lose weight as well. So then there's the extra stress of, oh, I should be eating less. So then you've got that stress component without realizing that if we could just slow it all down, eat properly and eat slower, that these things do get better and just calm that whole cortisol response, because your body's just, it's so inflammatory.
It is so inflammatory. And, I think the one problem that we say, well, stress is a trigger. Stress can be from so many different things. Also, too, to what your own journey is, that not eating enough is also stressful for the body. Not getting those nutrients in is also stressful. The dysbiosis, or the imbalance in the microbiome, is stressful, right? It's a stress that you can't leave behind. It goes to bed with you. It gets up in the morning and goes to work with you. It's there all the time. And that's not even including then those the recording that we hear in our head of, like, some people have some very awful things to say about themselves. They're extremely judgmental, extremely critical. We put ourselves down. We can't celebrate wins. And that is extremely stressful as well. So we have the multiple components of stress that make it very difficult sometimes to measure just how stressed one is,
Yeah, 100%. And I didn't recognize any of that at the time. But the fact that, I was a perfectionist, my parents had gone through a divorce, or I was, leading into uni and stuff. So I was juggling all this family stuff, and I'm a fixer, and I'm a helper, and I'm empathetic, and seeing two people I love go through that and really taking that on was a massive thing for me as well. And that sort of that family trauma on top of working really hard at uni because I wanted to do really well was another stressor. And then I added 6 days of CrossFit on top of that, and then I ate 1,200 calories, and then I went overseas and got gut infections, and it was like, no wonder my skin was flaring up, and I had acne because I would have had blood sugar dysregulation as well, and those hormonal imbalance. But then also, you know, those hosts inside my body, those parasites and pathogens would have been like, this is just great because, you know, there's nothing to fight against me because my immune system was so damaged as well.
Mm-hmm. And Sheradyn, I just want to also ask you one quick question about like just testing in general, because I think a lot of times people in Australia, especially those who are listening, or New Zealand, who are listening to this podcast, they're like, oh, well, Jen talks about these tests, but they're not sure whether they can actually get that type of similar testing in, you know, your hemisphere, like on the other side. So can you just, for anybody listening, I mean, I know for a fact, you know, you can get a lot of blood labs that are pretty much the same as in the US. But in terms of the functional tests, what are available for somebody who is living in Australia or New Zealand, or, you know, I don't even know. Do you work with anybody that's in like Southeast Asia, or it's mostly confined to Australia and New Zealand?
Yeah, mostly Australia and New Zealand, but honestly, all the testing is available here. So the most common ones I run is your stool test, so either the GI map or like the Doctor's Data GI 360. There's sort of two options there that are kind of the most common ones. But then your Dutch, so your comprehensive hormone testing, I run that in most clients as well. There are, you know, other routes for hormone testing, of course, blood and saliva, but I kind of get to the point where I want the best for you. Let's just go right to the top. But then also like your SIBO breath testing, I run a lot of that. And then some people also, you know, like your hair trace mineral analysis, if they need it, that's an option as well. So they're the main ones. I know some people do a lot of food allergy testing and other things as well. It's not my forte, like I don't do it straight off the bat. I'm usually start with something like your stool testing because I want to get sort of down to the nitty gritty on those sides of things. But we are really lucky. We've got some really great labs here who provide, you know, access to all those testing. So it is great.
Yeah, and I will also share too, like I don't run food sensitivity panels. I think it's, for the most part, like 98% of the time, it's a waste of money to do it. I think the stool test and a lot of and the other tests you actually mentioned are a lot better. They're more efficient, and they're a better use of funds to be able to like spend your money, invest in those areas, and then work on them, because food sensitivities can shift and change. So most of the time, I'm sure you can kind of pull out of a client's like their food journal and like you can kind of say, okay, it sounds like you might have an issue with these. Like, how about we just like avoid these for right now? We'll add more of this in instead. And like with time, we'll retest, you know, you'll try and reintroduce and we'll see if you tolerate it better. That's kind of my approach because I don't want people to spend money on a test that's like, eh.
I know, because funds are so limited as it is, you know, like for someone to go, okay, I need to set aside, you know, let's say in Australian dollars, like maybe it's $1,000 if you want to do stool and hormone testing and something else. Like if you're trying to do a couple grand's worth of testing, it is a lot of money. Plus people are aware that, you know, it's a lot of time on your and my end, and that's obviously needs to be payable. And then also there is a supplement element to it as well, because I just don't believe or haven't seen someone who can fix it from food and nutrition alone. I do believe that these supplements play a really important role in it, and people, you know, once they sort of become aware of that, they kind of go, shivers, that means I can't order 3-4 tests within a, you know, 6-month period, because that's just not financially viable. You might over the space of 8 years, like I have, do different tests and your oats test as you kind of go and whatnot. But yeah, so sort of go, hey, what's going to give me the most bang for my buck, in a sense, as to start making changes that I'm going to feel better sooner. And then if I want to go down the nitty gritty a little bit later and really hone in on some of those things, awesome, go for it,
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. See, this is why we're friends. We share a lot of same ideas about how to approach things.
Yes. No, love it.
I love it. Well, I know. So I just want to let everybody know, first of all, Sheradyn is on Instagram. She's got a great Instagram feed, everybody, so you should check it out. She does a lot of reels and all sorts of things, tons of education, so you should definitely go and follow her there. She's got her website, SheradynDekker.com, and she's got the Empowered Hormones podcast, which I was a guest on. So I'm going to link all of this up in the show notes. And know, too, if you approach me because you really want to work with me and my practice, we're likely going to send you to Sheradyn. So that's one reason I really wanted to have her come on the show, because she's awesome. I love her. I love her podcast. I think she's doing tremendous work, and she's a real asset to everybody who's living in Australia and New Zealand to be able to get access to the things that she has access to, including like professional grade supplements and the testing and everything that you are looking for or you hear talked about here on the Healthy Skin Show. And so hopefully, Sheradyn, we can have you come back and talk about something else. But thank you so much for being open to sharing your story and talk about, most people are like, I don't want to talk about my bowel movements, and I don't want to talk about my awful scalp issues. I don't want to tell all these people about it. That's embarrassing. So I appreciate your willingness to share your own journey with everyone here.
Oh, no, I can't thank you enough. The day I stumbled across your Instagram was just a game changer for me, because I was like, I didn't know that there was such a strong connection. And seeing women now with, their eczema and just seeing the changes when their gut microbiome starts to shift, I'm just like, this is incredible. Why do more people not know about this kind of stuff? Same with acne, same with scalp stuff. It's just things that we battle for years having no idea. So thank you for your podcast, for creating that awareness and for helping practitioner like me get the best results with clients, because we're just digging that bit deeper.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here, and hopefully we'll have you come back sometime.
Thanks, Jen.
I feel so grateful to have had Sheradyn here on the show, sharing her story, especially since we have referred clients to her who live in Australia and New Zealand. So please make a point to check out her website. We've got all of the links over in the show notes at skinterrupt.com/241. There you can also leave questions and comments so we can keep the conversation going. And if you know someone who's struggling and looking for a practitioner in Australia or New Zealand, or this story just really resonates with you, please make a point to share this episode with someone who may need to hear this. I think it's so powerful that we continue to share our personal journeys as a way not only to inspire one another, but also to remember that so much of what we go through is shared, and that you truly are not alone, that while the people maybe directly around you might not fully understand what you're going through, there are people out there who do. Then head over to rate and review the Healthy Skin Show podcast on your podcast platform, and hit the subscribe button so you never miss a weekly dose of inspiration, tips, research, and alternative strategies you probably haven't heard of yet to help you rebuild healthy skin. And let's connect over on Instagram and on social media. I'm at Jennifer Fugo. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.